Ultraman Omega 14 finally delivers on the promise and the premise that the show started with and was promoted with. There are no kaiju on this earth. There are no Ultramen. There's no history of a giant of light. We have Sorato Okida fall to earth, naked and alone, without his memories, and then he becomes Ultraman. He becomes Omega. He transforms into a giant and fights to defend the people of Earth from a monster that is not of this world. Finally, in episode 14, I will not belabor how the show has dropped that premise and violated that promise over and over and over again. For that, you can check out the playlist in the pinned comment. And anyway, it's not a happy story. And ironically, the best episode of this show, even though it almost violates the promise and premise of the show, even though it doesn't explicitly, is episode 5, Miko and Makoto, which is actually referenced in this episode, which I find strange. I almost wonder if it's a nod and a wink to the fact that that's one of the better episodes, or it's really the best episode of the show so far. But it may not be. What's important is that we have another man fall from the stars, from the sky, naked and alone. But he's not alone for long, because he meets somebody who doesn't show him kindness, but who he shows violence to and who he attacks. He takes this man's clothes, he takes this guy's identity, so to speak, and he goes around and finally finds Sorato and attacks him. This man, this alien, is from the Genesis people, or possibly the Genesis Empire. He's either from them or he contains them within himself. Like, his name is like Zovaras or something like that. I don't remember the actual name that they flashed on the screen. But the point is, he's here to bring Sorato's past into conflict with him, into contact with him and into conflict with him. And it's very satisfying because we've done a lot of, we don't know what Sorato's story is. We don't know what his origins are. To some extent, it doesn't matter, but to some extent, it does. And the show has not so far treated this with consistency or seriousness that it should, or as it should. And the only reason it should is not because this is a certain, well, it's because it's a story and it needs to be internally consistent and internally satisfying if it wants to be taken seriously at all. And I don't mean serious as in dark or grim or brooding. I just mean if you want the story to be a real story and to have an actual arc to it or have an impact, it can't just be a series of events happening in a certain sequence. Even if the sequence follows logically, there has to be meaning to it. And so far, there has not been a lot of meaning to the incidental stories that have been going on in Ultraman Omega. And that's not because they've been filler stories, it's because they've been somewhat empty stories, somewhat devoid of real meaty, juicy content. We're not getting full insights into Sorato's character or into Kosei's character. Things have happened to them, but some of the things have happened on repeat. It's almost like a sitcom where the characters reset after the episode is over, and you don't really need to be following along. You don't really need to be paying attention to understand what's going on and to get the full dynamic or to get full enjoyment out of their story, because their story's been so thin, it doesn't really reward the continuous watching of the show. It rewards, well, I don't know what it rewards, but it doesn't reward like a dedicated, serious watching. And one could argue that because this is children's media, it doesn't really need to be operating on that level. It doesn't need to reward that level of viewership or dedication or close watching. But at the same time, why wouldn't you want it to? Why wouldn't you want it to? Why is it good enough to just make a series of things happen in the show without telling an overarching story? And I think this episode is evidence that the producers, the writers, the directors, the crew working on Omega don't just want to give a sequence of things happening. They want the stories to build upon each other. They want the world to be fleshed out and to become fleshed out. And we're finally getting to see, with this task force going on, what would happen to a world that's encountering this type of threat for the first time. And you can also say that we're seeing the consequences to Omega's actions play out. We don't know why in the opening of the first episode he was killing these creatures on this planet. Is that planet Genesis? Is that part of the Genesis Empire? Are those kaiju that were being manufactured as biological weapons by the Genesis Empire? And this Zovaras, or whatever his name is, possessing this person, or not possessing this person, but in this human body now, is he part of the Zovas Empire instead? Because he says, or the Genesis Empire, he says all the people of Genesis live within him. Is it actual people? Is it kaiju? Is it monsters? What is it? Are the meteor kaiju the denizens of Genesis? Is that why he has one inside of him? It opens up all these different storytelling possibilities and all these different connections that could have been played upon and utilized throughout the series in the episodes so far. We're at 14 episodes plus, including a recap episode, so 13 episodes of real content. If you take the one episode of setup that we had, or two maybe, you could say, of setup that we have missed so many opportunities to explore. What is Reckiness? What is Trigoron? Why do they both have the pentagonal crest on their chest? Why does Omega have that crest on his chest? Has he always had it? Is it something that developed? Whatever. Why does this new thing have the crest on its chest? Does that mean the three of them are part of a set? Probably yes. Also, if this fellow has all of this people of this world inside of him, does that mean that Sorato also has all of these people, also has the capacity to have many people of a world inside of him as well? And does that give credence to the theory that all the kaiju were seeded from him as he fell to Earth? It should, and in a different show, being handled by a different creative staff or being directed in a different way, we would be getting those answers, and we would have been getting them teased throughout the series, but we haven't been. And I'm very happy that these questions are being asked now and that this information is being presented now, and I find it very compelling and engaging. And frankly, it's not the fact that this episode ends on a cliffhanger that makes me want to continue watching episode 15 and beyond. It's that this story treats the premise and the promise, well, it treats the premise as legitimate and real and something that has weight, and it is fulfilling the promise that we were given at the beginning of the show. Therefore, it's drawing me in and making me want to watch it. What did you think about episode 14 of Omega? Is it drawing you in the same way? Were you as relieved as I was to see how it's developing the story? Or are you a person who doesn't really care for the structure of the story of the series as a whole? I'd be curious to encounter people with that opinion as well and to find out why. Leave me a comment so we can discuss this episode and Omega as a whole, if you like. I'd like you to be light on spoilers if you can, but if not, I understand. And also check out my pinned comment where I dive deeper into this episode of Ultraman Omega, and you can also find my playlist where I talk about the rest of Omega, as well as other things like the superior and very fantastic Kamen Rider Zets. Until next time, folks, this is MJ with Henshin Inspection and Going Ultra, signing out.